Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us today. It's 3 p.m. in the UK and 10 a.m. Eastern time, and you're all most welcome to join us here at 0 Days Live. Now, for regulars of the show, you'll be aware that we run a different theme every day of the week, and today is Tech Tuesday, where we'll be joined in just a few moments by Eleanor Bradley from our Registry Solutions and Public Benefit sector at Nominet. Tomorrow, though, is Security Begins Here, where we talk to security professionals about the challenges they face with regard to cyber, followed by our GovSec segment on Thursday. Friday is, of course, Fun Friday, where we keep things slightly light-hearted and have a retrospective look at the week. And we've got some great guests coming and joining us for the remainder of the week as well. Now, this week is a short week for many of us with Easter weekend upon us, but fear not, we will be delivering a bumper show on Thursday, so it will be 2 for the price of 1 so that we don't miss out on our Fun Friday. Now, yesterday, of course, was Industry Insights Day on Monday, where we were fortunate enough to be joined by Alphys Hines, who runs a cybersecurity consultancy firm for the financial services industry. And he gave his perspective on all things finance and how digitization has driven cybersecurity firmly up the agenda. Most of you will know this already, but a quick introduction from me. My name's Stuart Reed, and I'm with Nominet, focused on cyber solutions. And a little bit about us at Nominet. You may be familiar with us being responsible for managing the .uk domain, which we've been doing now for over 23 years and have something in the order of 15 million domains currently under management. In addition, and building on an experience of domains and the DNS, or the domain name system, we also provide cybersecurity solutions to protect both government and enterprise networks worldwide from cyber attacks, including providing service to the UK government's National Cybersecurity Centre. And at Nominet, ensuring people are able to be connected, included and secure is at the heart of what we do. And with a lot of people perhaps feeling slightly disconnected from one another right now, especially with the usual conferences, events and face-to-face meetings being paused at the moment, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to do something a little bit different and create a webcast that is open for all within or with an interest in cybersecurity. Now, the premise of our show is really quite simple: to provide an opportunity to hear from others in the industry, get a roundup of what's going on in the news, and share some thoughts on best practice as we all navigate our way through what is and continues to be a changing world. But most importantly, we want your involvement too. During today's show and in any of the other live shows that you join, you'll notice in your console on the screen the ability to ask us a question or provide a comment, so please do use it. Any questions you have for us today, please do ask them and we'll read them out during today's webcast. And as just a quick reminder, we are keeping this all very authentic, as you can see, and we're running these webcasts every weekday live between now and at least the end of June. So that is probably around 40 live episodes from us. Each of those will last for about 30 minutes, but there are no hard and fast rules. And now we are live, so anything could and probably will happen, but we hope you'll agree if and when it does. It's just part of the natural charm of the show. Now, whilst we are live, we're also available at your convenience on demand. Each show can be found at nominetcyber.com/0dayslive, which is the same page that you signed up from, so it really couldn't be easier. And as with every show, we're joined by a great team, both here in the virtual studio and also behind the scenes, plus very special guests joining us each and every day. So let's do some intros. Steve, where are you?
Right here, at last. I was going to.
Good stuff. There was a bit of a pause there.
Yeah, I thought technology was going to fail us.
Good stuff. Well, you're here, which is the main thing. Important things first. What's in your mug today?
My mug. So yesterday I got criticised for just drinking normal tea with milk. So I've upped my game a little bit today. Bearing in mind I can't go to the shops. I'm on Earl Grey, which was the only thing I had in my cupboard. My mum is the only person that drinks this when she visits, and I'm not really that impressed, to be honest. I think I'll go back to Yorkshire tea tomorrow.
Very elegant choice of you today. I'm a bit surprised at that, to be honest, Steve. So kudos to you. I've actually today, for me, taken a bit of a leaf out of Kerry's book, and I've gone peppermint today. So cheers to you. And speaking of Kerry, what's in your tea today?
Oh, Stuart, obviously one for a challenge and winning a challenge. I have gone for today, we have apple rose hip raspberry ripple.
Wow,
Quite nice.
well, I can't compete with that one quite clearly. Sorry, Steve, I'm not sure you can today either. But it is a kind of upping your game from where we were yesterday. So baby steps.
I'm on a slow path.
Now, please.
But the fact you have to read that from a sheet carrier, I think that's cheating.
It's a long title. Come on.
But it did sound very, very nice. So maybe you can virtually send us some of that at some point as well, Kerry, so we can all try. So back to what I was saying to you all tuning in and joining us. Please do let us know what you have in your tea or in your mug today by simply just writing in the screen. Now, as I mentioned a few moments ago, today is, of course, Tech Tuesday, and we are very lucky enough to be joined by Eleanor Bradley, as I mentioned before, Registry Solutions and Public Benefit here at Nominet, who's here to talk to us about the work Nominet's been doing around domain name security. Hi, Ellie, great to have you here.
Hi, Stuart, nice to be here.
Good stuff. Appreciate you joining us today and taking the time out to join us on the show. So first things first, I guess, really, what's in your tea?
Well, I didn't get the memo, clearly, and Steve is a man after my own heart, so I am all about the builders, white as it comes, not complicated.
Excellent. Well, very solid choice, very similar to what Steve had yesterday, and likely what he's probably going to defer to the rest of the week with, but we shall see tomorrow. So great to have you here, Ellie. Appreciate you joining us. I guess there's a lot of interesting dynamics going on right now, not least in the world of domain names. So I guess the first question is, in the light of what's going on right now, are cyber criminals really starting to take advantage of COVID-19 with regards to the domain names that are being spun up?
Unfortunately, yes. We're certainly seeing a real increase in the number of domains that are being registered, including strings like coronavirus or COVID. And what we have at Nominet, through the work we already do to protect .uk, is established processes for identifying names that could be associated with phishing or other criminal activity. So we're very much pointing that activity at the current trends we're seeing.
And in terms of the trends that we are seeing there, I guess it's important also to distinguish between those that may be being spun up for malicious intent and those that are being spun up for more legitimate reasons as well. How are you distinguishing between those?
Absolutely. So we have a process in place that's well established where we can identify strings that are associated potentially with phishing. So normally we would use that to find names maybe that involved a government agency, maybe HMRC, or something to do with the passport office or banking related names. And we actually run an algorithm across all registrations when they're initially made, and we will pull out those names where we think there's a high likelihood of phishing. And we're using that tech now to then look at names as they're being registered to identify strings that could be being used to prey on the current situation. We've so far suspended at registration about 600 names. The numbers continue to rise, but also we've let through and gone through to registration several hundred where they are perfectly legitimate. And of course, all the time we're trying to strike that balance between legitimate use and people who are potentially going to use a name to phish, to prey on individuals. So the kind of different domains you might see is we've seen a great example of coronaloner.co.uk, someone blogging about their experience now working from home. We've seen communities set up corona-related support networks online and using related domain names, but equally, we're seeing people attempting to register things like COVID vaccine or COVID medication, things that we know from the MHRA, from our Medicines Authority, are not available, cannot be purchased online, and those are exactly the kind of names that we are looking to stop at the point of registration. And we do that by not delegating the names, and then we actually get in touch with the applicant for the name, and we want to understand a bit more about them and a bit more about their intent. Surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly, we tend not to hear back from people whose intent with their name is not legitimate. But it's very much, I think this is exactly what we see, unfortunately, normally. It's just a different string, a different issue that's being, that people are attempting to use as part of the scams that they are trying to perpetrate.
Thank you. And I noticed that Steve's popped up, which can only mean one thing. He's got some burning questions to ask as well. Steve, what would you like to ask Ellie?
Yeah, I'm just interested. You mentioned phishing there as one of the potential uses of these types of domains. What other types of cyber attacks are we seeing these domains being used for? Are there new, ingenious ways of using these domains maliciously, or is it the same type of attack that we would normally see?
So far, there's nothing really new that we're seeing. It might be someone who previously was trying to persuade you to spend money to apply for your passport through a gateway, now trying to sort of turn their attention to encouraging people to click on links to information on coronavirus or medication options and that kind of thing. And I think it's particularly challenging, though, obviously, in the current climate. People are hungry for information. People are understandably worried and scared. And so what we're trying to do all the time is actually prevent those registrations getting through, so the content can't be there in the first place. We also, though, have established procedures in place with law enforcement in the UK. We work with a number of key agencies, so that if, for example, a registration that doesn't have a string that we could identify at the point of registration, but is maybe more general in its terms, gets through, then we can work on suspending that domain name post-registration if we need to. And so those relationships with law enforcement are absolutely key.
Great, thank you. And clearly you said that this is a well-established process that we've got, and we're now just pointing the resources and the processes that we've got at COVID-19. But so over the years, we must have established what a telltale sign is of a potentially malicious domain. Can you tell us a bit more about what that looks like from our perspective?
Yeah, so the sort of things we'll be looking for are, sometimes it's very blatant. It's simply HMRC appears in the domain name itself. It could be that characters are changed or omitted, where it just, if you don't look at it closely, you wouldn't necessarily notice. It can be the use of hyphens. So there's a whole range of things that people do, and it just points again to that, the advice that we hear all the time about being incredibly careful, seeing where emails have come from, being super vigilant in terms of clicking on links and that kind of thing, all the kind of normal cyber hygiene that we would encourage everyone to ensure they're kind of up to date on. But it is, yeah, there's lots of different methods that people will try and make the most of at a time like this, I'm afraid.
And Ellie, from me, you kind of described that cyber criminals are trying hard, it seems, to capitalize on the COVID-19 crisis right now, which is shocking on one hand, but perhaps on the other hand, it's no great surprise that they're looking at ways of exploiting the situation. You touched on a little bit some of the work that Nominet's doing to kind of identify these, but where do you see Nominet's broader role in protecting the UK internet?
So I think there's things that we obviously do at a registry level that are incredibly important, from the infrastructure and the stability and the resilience of the underlying infrastructure on which the .uk top-level domain actually operates. That's part of the critical national infrastructure, so absolutely crucial. We have, as I mentioned, a number of long-established relationships in place with law enforcement in the UK, where we will routinely act to suspend domain names where we're advised they're involved with criminal activity. Just last year, we suspended almost 30,000 domains. They will be anything from domains selling fake goods, fake medicines. They may be phishing domains, domains, they may be distributing malware. So there's a whole range of ways that we'll be working with law enforcement to try to make sure that .uk is as safe and secure as it can possibly be. But then it's also a point about education. I'm really conscious that there's a lot of information out there at the moment about the potential heightened risks of all of us now working from home and the need for people to be incredibly vigilant. A lot of our customers from a domain perspective will be small businesses, and whilst I think enterprises tend to maybe hopefully feel they've got the right advice, they know how to advise their teams, obviously really important to think about the smaller businesses in supply chains and that sort of thing. So we work with a range of other organisations to provide education and information, and hopefully in a way that small businesses kind of find it easy to consume and actually act upon. So a range of things from infrastructure to education to just making sure that .uk is as safe as it can be. And of course, from a cyber perspective, as you will be much more familiar with, we're doing all we can to keep UK government safe as well. Okay, great. Thank you, Ellie. And Kerry, if I turn over to you for any questions we got from the audience.
Yeah, we've got a couple actually. Thanks, Ellie. That's been really interesting. What other types of news actually spur similar uplifts to this? And that's from Lindsay.
I think certainly we see spikes around particular issues. Or you see often it might be a time of year. So you might see spikes around HMRC related domains at the time of year when we're all trying to remember to do our tax returns. You might see more related to passport office or visa applications as you move into the summer months. So perhaps more around sort of events in the calendar and things like that. We've seen certainly challenges around particular parts of the banking sector at times. We know that that's clearly a sector that people prey upon in terms of phishing activity. So in a real mixture. In the run up to Christmas, I'm afraid the fake goods sites perhaps go into overdrive and that sort of thing. So it will be maybe dependent on something that's going on in the news that people could potentially kind of take advantage of, but equally seasonal variation as well is something we see.
Great. And then we've got one in from Mac. I'm saying, is this kind of takedown a global initiative, or is it something that's being driven by Nominet?
This is something we're I think very much at the forefront of at Nominet. We've always been very proactive and willing to work with law enforcement agencies in the UK to keep the UK as safe and secure as we possibly can. You get you get different approaches depending on the policies of different registries around the world. So some will take much more of a wait and see, and though perhaps in relation to COVID names, we'll be waiting to see how a domain is being used. We've taken a view that actually we want to sort of step in at the point of registration in these very unusual circumstances. Other registries, will be doing similar things, but it's not a global policy. It is one that is very much driven by the approach and the way in which the country code top level domain is operated.
And then we have one from Sarah that says, if you were to spot a suspicious looking domain, what should you do about it?
So if there's one in existence and you're worried about it, I think the best advice is to speak to Action Fraud or Trading Standards. So if it's an established name, we have relationships with those organisations and they can bring them to us, but they will have done, when it's an established name and we're looking for actual criminality, that's not something that we would judge upon. It's something that one of the law enforcement agencies would look at. So raise it there and they will then come to us and we can take action if it's appropriate.
Thank you. That's the question.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the audience questions there as well from you at home. If you do have any other questions, we do have a bit more time before we get to the top of the show, so please do ask them. In the meantime, thank you very much, Ellie. What we'll do now is we're almost at the top of the show, but as I say, we've got a few more minutes for any more questions. In the meantime, I'll hand back over to Kerry to do a bit of a wash up of today's news.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. So Info Security magazine reports that data thieves have attacked a Californian property company. The information stolen includes names, date of birth, social security numbers and addresses. ZDNet reports that Italian email provider email.it has confirmed a data breach exposing 600,000 users' details, which are now being sold on the dark web. And finally, Information Security Magazine again also reports that 2 men in Australia have been arrested in connection with a $2.6 million business email compromise scam. The pair email businesses with altered invoices, which pay money into their personal accounts. So what would you do with 2.6 million, then, Stuart, if you had it?
I'd probably invest in some more fancy tea bags like you've got, Kerry, I should imagine. So thank you for that. Just highlights again that there's all sorts of different facets to cybercrime. The pieces that we're seeing in the news here seems to be emphasizing the value that data has, and where there's value, there are people that are looking to exploit that, as we can see in those headlines today. So thank you very much for that, Kerry. That is it for today, except to again say very special thanks to our special guest, Eleanor Bradley from Nominet, joining us. Everyone front of house and behind the scenes here at 0 Days Live, and of course to all of you for joining us at the webcast, both live and on demand. Quick reminder for tomorrow, it is Security Begins Here, so we will be welcoming back into the virtual studio HAS F1's Gary Foote with his comments around cyber stress. So please do join us then. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Until then, have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.